Hi, my name's Kurt France, and welcome to the presentation on working in information technology, IT. This presentation is for people who are thinking about going in IT or on the cusp of going in IT. Maybe they're taking classes at school, they're going into an internship in that field, or they've been in there for at least a few years or up to a few years, and still there's much to learn or different perspectives to be taking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present based on my background. I've been in the IT field for more than 40 years. I've been in with 7 different companies. I've worked in many different roles. I've been a contractor, a full-time employee. I've been in an architect, a designer, a developer, a tester, a planner, a scrum master. I've worked in small companies like a two-man outfit, startup, and huge corporations like IBM for 20 years. So I've interacted with peers, all levels of management, up to and including CEOs and presidents. I was asked to become a manager, but I've never became a manager. But I did marry somebody who became a manager, so I have some insights from the management perspective as well. So I can present what it's like to work in IT, and I'm going to talk on these topics in this presentation. I'm not going to leave this on the screen. You can freeze the frame and read them if you care to, or just wait for them to come along. Business terminology and concepts. Some of these terms have been used or are used in a non-business world. They just bleed over, or maybe they came in the other direction. I'm not sure. I don't know where they started. But in the business world, we do things like war rooms, which tends to be on all hands, at least all important hands, all relevant hands on deck, trying to address something that, in a rapid manner. Like maybe we're running late on a release, and we don't want to miss that date. It's too critical. So we'll put together a war room order, some major problem happening in like real time, and it needs to be addressed real time. So you put a bunch of people together who really understand what the problem might be and can go about attacking it. And that tends to be like round the clockish kind of thing, or can be. It may also be over a period of a few days or even weeks. But war room is a sort of extreme instance that can happen. Newbies tend not to get called too much into those because they're going to demand people with pretty broad experience and knowledge. There are things called deep dives, and that's an after the fact, something bad happened. Maybe it was addressed in a war room, but it's like, how the heck did this happen? What was responsible for it? What could we do better? And that can take longer. There's not such a set time on having to resolve the deep dive. But what's more important is finding out whatever it was that needs to be addressed and addressing that something. A focus group is often is put in place when there's a belief that we're not addressing the market in a proper way, or we have a couple of choices we could be making and what's the better way to go at it. So there'll be focus groups that'll be formed that'll involve ideally customers as well as the people who are going to be providing a solution. Once it's determined what a solution would be for, what is it that they're trying to meet, what requirement are they trying to address? Now, IT is, just as this name implies, information technology, is heavy with acronyms. So I'm going to show a list of when I started at IBM. These were acronyms that pretty much was being used every day with the group that I was in. I'm not going to say what they all mean, but just to get an idea on how some of them you can pronounce, other ones you can't really pronounce, but they're all over the place. I had a place of employment with they had a page of acronyms. There was over 400 acronyms. And often when I'm doing something at work, reading something, I would see an acronym I didn't recognize. So I go to this acronym list, and it wasn't there. 400. So there's way more than 400 acronyms in the typical business that's in IT. I suggest one of the things one does, I've been doing this for many years now, is have something I call a useful information Word document that I keep. So if I start in a new job, it's like, I'm putting like, how do I log onto this or go onto that system? A lot of times in a job, you'll access something on a rare occasions. You're not likely to remember how it was that you got there, or where to go and what to do. So this useful information is something you put in there. Over time, some of those things that might be, you do them so often, you don't need the useful information anymore, but they're still good to keep around because you can share your use for information file with other people. Now, people can also post this in a public place, but if everybody's doing that, there's going to be a lot of overlap and a lot of maybe potentially confusion from people saying different things in those. Hey, that worked for me, doesn't work for me. So at any rate, at least have your own personal useful information document, because I find that very helpful. Now, a thing about working in IT is technology changes fast. I'm going to give a list of things that have changed in my career in IT. And I'm just going to start with IBM in 1983. I was actually in IT even before that. But in 1983 is the year that the internet was born. And it wasn't for another 12 years before the public can access it. So that means that there were no websites, there were no companies that depended on it, like a Google would not exist, and Amazon would not exist. No social media existed. So as I'm going through this list, think about how your life would be different 40 years ago, 40 plus years ago, when all these things were not there and got changed. When I started, Apple didn't have a laptop, didn't have a computer. There were no Mac computers. IBM did have a PC a little bit before I started. I had got my first personal computer was a TRS-80, Tandy Radio Shack is that acronym, which was that was one of the very early personal computers that anybody had, and its specs were a 1.78 megahertz processor with 4 kilobytes of RAM, and on my Model 1, no secondary storage on board. You had to load programs and send programs to a cassette player, a cassette tape. That's how you were recording secondary data. There were no local area networks, and there was not Wi-Fi then. There was obviously no Bluetooth. So at that time, with none of those things, it was not possible to work from home. What we worked on were systems connected to a mainframe. The monitors were not flat screens; those didn't exist yet. We had cathode ray tubes, so there's the big honkers, and monochrome, generally green or yellowish, whitish kind of text. And there was no word processor was a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, another acronym. That you would have to, if you wanted formatted the document when it was printed, you had to put tags in. It was sort of like HTML before HTML. There was no Windows operating systems at that time. And when I started, it was just a year after CDs became publicly available. And prior to that, we moved away from cassettes, and we put secondary storage became floppy drives. There was a 5 1/4 floppy drive, which I don't have an example of on hand, but I do have the thing that followed that. Those floppy drives would only hold about 160 kilobytes of data. Then they came out with these. Some still call them floppies. They're actually also called diskettes, not floppy disk, but diskettes, to distinguish them from the truer floppy drive. The 5 1/4 you could wiggle around and it would wave because it was a magnetic disk inside of basically a stiff cardboard sleeve. These, I even have one. Here's an IBM one still in its wrapper. I never even opened that one, but it does say on it a diskette. So we did call them diskettes. But these are the things you see as the icon on basically on everything that you can file from, any Office or other software. If you want to be able to save what you're writing, you click the icon that looks like this. Even though people haven't been seeing these or touching these, they haven't been manufactured in 10 years or something. You can see there's the floppy piece of it. There's the magnetic disk that sits inside, but this is not floppy. Which why floppy was I think was sort of a bad name. Just because something's soft inside doesn't mean it's the whole thing is soft. It's floppy. It's not floppy. You can see I can't wiggle it. It doesn't bend like a piece of paper. When I started, it was just 4 years after Walkman started. And people might not even know what those are, but they were like sort of portable cassette players that you can listen to music on. Portable music player, and so that was before the iPod. The iPod sort of displaced the Walkman because it was bulkier. The Walkman was. And the funny thing, there's a couple of funny things about the iPod, and it exposes some things. So IBM had that technology before Apple did. IBM could have come out with the whatever they would have called it instead of an iPod, but they chose not to because they saw that as a consumer play, and IBM was more into businesses, selling to businesses you can put a bigger markup on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, businesses don't spend their own money, right? I mean, the people making the purchase decision in businesses are not spending their own money. The business is spending its own money. But when you buy an iPod or something, that's your money you're spending. You're making the decision and you're spending your money. If you're working for a company and you're the one that's supplying it with paper clips and pens, et cetera, and you're buying whatever, that's not your money you're spending. It's money on behalf of that's the corporation. You're spending it on behalf of them. So that's who IBM likes to go after. You get a bigger markup because, hey, what do I care? It's not my money. It's the company's money. Right? I got to get what's ever good. So IBM passed on that. An iPod, which Apple had for about 20 years before they retired it, it made them. They sold about 500 million iPods, and it made them over $9 billion when they were marketing those. And it not only it still exists not as iPods being sold, but it birthed iTunes. Like shortly after iPods came out, iTunes came out, and iTunes generates several billion dollars. They made $8 billion last year on iTunes. So how many billions of dollars that IBM turned its nose up at because that's a consumer play. We don't have the markup on it. Yeah, bright. That's why IBM struggled for a long time starting around that time. This was when I started. It was before like Bose headphones, so the quality of listening to something like that was not too high, and it was before first commercially available CDs. So it's funny that CDs, I mean, they came and displaced the floppies and things like that for loading up software, but they also displaced vinyl records for listening to music. But after 36 years of being out there head to head, vinyl records are now outselling. There was more spent on vinyl records than there were on CDs last year. When I started, there were no DVD players. But this is one of these, and this happens with some of this stuff. Technologies will come and technologies will go. So DVDs that displaced, again, some loading up more complex software, larger software, and it was things that you would watch movies on and stuff. They're now on their last legs being replaced with streaming and DVRs. When I started, GPS was not available to the public. Again, think in your life how much of these things. Maybe you don't listen to CDs because you're listening to vinyl now, and maybe you don't watch DVDs, but you probably were around using them at some point and say, all right, I'm moving to something else. These things are coming and going, and it's going to continue like that. When I started, SQL was not really a thing. It wasn't a standard. It was developed by IBMers, but it didn't become a standard until after 83. I don't remember just when it was. Not long after, I think. When I started, there was no C++ or Java or HTML. The programming languages largely were Fortran, COBOL, and C. The only software development lifecycle, SDLC, an acronym, was waterfall. So you see languages and standards and processes, they come and they go. So you will see a lot of change in your career in IT. I also started before the ISO 9001 audits, which those are now used by millions of companies worldwide, and they're supposed to be a certification of quality management system in place. I think it's kind of a scam, but it's an effective one because people go and use it. Hey, it's stamped, so therefore it's quality. It's not the case. That doesn't follow. If it's not stamped, that doesn't say anything really about the quality. But there's that perception, and maybe some companies say we can only deal with companies that are ISO 9000 certified. That's the effectiveness of the scam. Now, just because technology changes quickly and dramatically, that's not the case that business necessarily changes at that kind of pace. Business has changed more in a sort of a glacier pace, and for good reason. When you have to get the elephant to dance to move it along a lot of times. So COBOL, there's still like a couple of 100 millions, maybe 1 billion lines of code of COBOL in the world that has to be supported. So if you're a COBOL guy that supports COBOL, probably an older guy, that's job security, because nobody coming up wants to learn that language. So you'll be doing until they get rid of it. But it's been a long time. It's entrenched in places like banks and airlines and things like that, where you can't easily pull something out without risking huge amount of money or danger, creating danger. Or in the case of the airlines, it's the way they do their bookings with COBOL programs. At least they were doing it, and they were IBM, because I remember problems when they would have issues. That they would generate war rooms and deep dives as a result of that. Oh, I forgot to mention, on these diskettes, even though they're not produced anymore, they're still used in avionics. The 747 depends on using those, and there's other industries that still use those floppies that haven't been produced in a decade, but there are a bunch laying around. Like, I just found 5. I have a couple of dozen probably around. So that was just in my career, the 40 years plus of my career. That many changes have come. A lot of them have gone. But the question that you could just ponder on is, what are you going to see in your career in IT? And it's quite possibly to span 40 years. So if that's intimidating to you, and I've seen some videos of people complaining that I don't want to have to do this for 40 years. Well, if you go down that career path, that's basically the life expectancy of your career. Changing careers is not easy to do, because you get used to the money in something, and to start something new, you're going to be a lot lower salary. Or you just give up the career, and if you're married, you can maybe live on one income and tend to family or something with the other person, which is a money saver. It doesn't generate income, but it saves income that is generated. One other thing I wanted to say about at the sort of concepts is the sort of positions. Now, every company I've been with, they make a distinction, it's a legitimate distinction, between people who are managers and people who are not managers, because there is a difference in responsibilities, obviously, and there is they have some legal responsibilities that non-managers, people who aren't managers, don't have. So they'll give them different names, like I've heard associates versus leaders, or employees versus managers, even though managers are employees. So it's kind of that was what IBM did, which is kind of a weird way to distinguish the two. There are, if you're becoming an intern, if you were an intern, interns are looked at by the company as gems, because they're like a protected class. They can be trained in whatever. They're cheap, much cheaper than regular employees or contractors. And they're treated more like employees. So you have that benefit, even though you don't have the benefit of getting as much money, because the expectation, hey, what are we training you for? You're going to be here 3 months or 6 months, and then you're gone. And what did we waste our time training you to become or do? So you don't get a lot of money when you're there, but you can gain a lot of experience, and you make good contacts, and you do a good job. You have the opportunity to be hired. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I suggest that each person, whatever your status is, whether you're a contractor or an intern or a full-time employee, including manager or non-manager, that you see yourself as an independent contractor. And your position as an independent contractor, think of yourself as somebody who's going to go over and handle whatever business for somebody who wants you to do their taxes, paint their house, whatever the heck it is. Your responsibility is to delight your customers. That's what you go in there for. That's the same thing when you're at work. You're looking to delight your customers, whether they're, your customers are primarily those who can hire or fire you, to your management team, but also the people you work with, because that's going to reflect back on you and the value of you to that company. So have that mentality of, I'm going to look and to delight the people that I'm around, and especially the people that are not around, the customers, the ultimate customers that the business is in place to provide goods and services to. Keeping in mind, almost all states, I think most states, have an at-will employment, or they can simulate it, which means you can be fired for no reason at all. I didn't like the way you were dressed today, or the way you smelled, or something. They don't even have to say that; just out you can go. And there's no recourse when it's an at-will state. But guess what? You can do the same thing. You know what? I'm tired of this. I don't want to be here no more. And you can walk out. Now, give 2 weeks notice or do whatever, but they may walk you out the door if you say, I'm giving 2 weeks. Okay, we don't want you here those 2 weeks, poisoning the environment. That happens. So it depends on the employee. It depends on what your history with them is. It's like, no, you've been so great, and maybe you're retiring. You're giving us 2 weeks notice. So, we would like to see you those last 2 weeks. I talked about all the things that have changed from an IT perspective, more from the work environment, but I want to talk also about it from your daily life perspective. This is basically the same kinds of things, but I want you to wear a different hat. Think about, how do you live on a day-by-day basis? So first, like, just take away the internet. You don't have the internet to access. You want to learn something about some topic, or who won the World Series in whatever year, you got to go to the library, or know somebody who really knows that particular, as a SME, as an acronym, subject matter expert, that you can trust and say, oh yeah, he would know if the Yankees won the World Series in 1936, right? That type of thing. There were few people that had personal computers, PCs, and other acronyms, and they tended to be digital islands that you couldn't, you could connect to your printer, but not other devices. So there really weren't LANs to speak of. They were there in a business environment, and universities and government, but that were pre-Ethernet, so there weren't as many of those, let's say, as sort of commonplace now. There were no what you communicated with, since you had no email. There's nothing to send email to, because other people didn't have the PCs. You would send faxes. So you had fax machines, and often people didn't have personal fax machines. So they had to go someplace, pick one up. So if people even know what fax machines are anymore, no smartphones, no cell phones. There actually was, Motorola had a cell phone in 1983, so that's right at the borderline when I'm starting this history of IT. But it had like a 30-minute talk time and a 6-hour recharge time. That you had to recharge it after 6 hours, and its cost in 2024 dollars was $12,000. So no, people weren't buying those. IBM came out with the first smartphone. It was like 1994 was the first time that those were available. So you didn't have smartphones. So what you got today, take away your internet, take away your smartphone, which a lot of times you're using that for accessing the internet and other things. I'll get to them momentarily. There was no wireless. You had to connect computers if you were going to connect them. So you have limited mobility with computing power. It's not like in your hand with a phone. Though I did mention GPS before, so that helps with traveling. Before, you used to have books of maps, or maps, the kind that you have to fold out in this big thing and fold it back up, and it's hard to do, hard to read, because it types really small, or trying to get a lot of cities names or street names or something on small amount of area. There were no consumer digital cameras like everybody has on their phones now. So if you were if you wanted to be taking pictures back then, you had to have a special camera. And they really weren't consumer versions of digital cameras. It was the ones that used film. 24 shots, 36 shots a roll. Paid a couple $3 for a roll, which is about $9 now. Inflation costs. Then you got to have to develop. So you took these pictures, you don't know how well they came out. You only generally took them special events. You went to a wedding or a vacation or some first of this or first of that in a kid's life or something, so you can get some memories from that. Basically, nobody took selfies with film cameras. And then you had to send them off, right? You got to take it out of your camera and send it off, or take it to a drugstore or something like that. So you got to drive there, leave it off. Maybe they can get them in a few hours. Some drugstores could do that. A lot of times it'd be a couple of days to get your film back and or your pictures back, and maybe $6-7 back then. So it's on the order of $10-ish to get a roll of film bought, taken pictures of, and then get it developed. And so you're paying somewhere $20-30 to get the set of 24 pictures that you took, compared to now they're all free, right? They're all just digital. And if they're screwed up a little bit, it's a little bit dark, or I cut somebody off, or I a little bit didn't have it framed so well, there's not a lot you can do. Like with a digital image, you can do a lot of editing with that and make it look significantly better, or at least the way you want it to look, as opposed to just having this hard copy of one. And you can't really share that hard copy other than physically, right? So you can show it to people. They go walking through my photo album book, or get extra copies made and send them off in mail, snail mail, to other people to have a look and see, oh, here's your first grandson or something. Send the hard copy pictures to them so they could see them that way. So there was, you could see the differences. I mean, and talking about people, the people that you knew were people that you met in person. You're not meeting people online, because there is no online to go to. You don't go to, like, I'm one of thousands following this guy, or there's thousands of people following me, and I'm sharing things, and people are commenting, and I'm posting comments to post and things like that. Wasn't there. So take all of that out of your life. And how is your life on a daily or weekly basis different without any of that stuff? It's pretty dramatic. And technology tends to accelerate in its changes, because you can build on more things as you have more pieces that have been created. So if you roll a clock forward 30, 40 years, and who knows what that technology is going to be, it's going to be a different universe. And people will, they can laugh or mock what, hey, you're living without this, that, and the other thing. Yeah. All right. Well, people 30, 40 years ago were living with all of these things that are your not only maybe daily routine, but hourly routine, moment by moment routine, that you can't conceive of life without this set of things. And this is only in generation and a half, 2 generations. That's it. That's not a long time. So one of the things I think a point it makes is to have humility for what people go through, what changes happen, and have a sense of history around your, not only your life, but the lives of those you interact with. Because it's not always and only like it is now. Like what you do now is not what other people do now or did before, right? It's different. So to think you can easily map what today's standards or norms or whatever are, and say, well, anybody that didn't do this, have that, whatever, it was wrong in the past, it was off in the past, it was primitive in the past. That's disrespectful to the point of being foolish. So this is the point to make. And technology comes and goes. So when you're working in this environment, things will come and go. The hot thing today isn't necessarily the hot thing tomorrow. So take that broader view in this field and in life more broadly. The next topic is leadership styles. Now, I'll say the most common style is to be a manager, which is not leadership, but it's considered a leadership style. Managing is not leading. That was one reason I turned down an offer to become a manager. I said I'd rather lead than manage. Probably was a leader, for most of my career, from teams from 2 to 25 or so. Leaders, think about a baseball manager. The manager's, telling who's going to play or what batting orders and stuff like that, or coaches calling plays maybe from the sideline, can be overruled by a quarterback. But those are managers. They're not. Well, they call them a coach in football or basketball, but they're sort of managing the situation. But the people who are leading in a situation tend to be the star players on a team. Patrick Mahomes is a leader. Tom Brady, anywhere he goes, is a leader. LeBron James and Aaron Judge. Those guys are not managers. They're not coaches, but they're the guy that the other players look to for leadership, for inspiration, to help them succeed in what it is that they're trying to do, largely win the game, but also succeed at a personal level, individual level during the game. So the true leaders, they'll provide vision, they'll provide guidance, they look to empower, they can set direction, they facilitate, they take away obstacles, they help uncover motivation. But above all else, they strive to serve others. They inspire them to achieve their goals that they may not even know they had them. And those others would include not only peers or coworkers or managers. You can lead managers, but customers. You really want to be able to delight the customers. And when you're leading like that, you are leading in the community at large. It's not only the set of people who are supposedly reporting to you or working under you on a team as the leader. Lao Tzu makes the point that the leader is best when people barely know he exists. Not so good when people obey and acclaim him, and the worst when they despise him. So it's the case that when a leader is a true leader, the people at the end of achieving their goal, they say, we did this. Not he did this or he directed us to do this, but we did this. And that's what you want. That's like leave no footprint behind kind of thing. So that's a servant leader, the best type of leader to have or to be. And anybody can be a leader, whatever your title, whatever your role. Leadership is not a position, it's a quality. So putting you someplace that's in a leadership position because you got people reporting to you or you're the head of the team doesn't make you a leader. That's something you have to do, not a position that you have. Now, next topic I want to talk about is really geared towards intern, but it applies to relatively new hires too, or people who've been around and maybe changed jobs or something. What you want to do, especially the less time you have, is really make a positive impression. That showing this is leadership skills, right? That you're helpful, that you're willing and you're eager to learn, to contribute, and you're enjoyable to be with. You're kind of, I like being around that person. She's a lot of fun, whatever, and gets things done, and I learn from them. Even though I've been around longer, I still learn from them. That's a good thing. If you can create something that will endure, and then you create a legacy. I've seen this with interns. They'll create a tool or a process improvement or some type of report fixing an application bug that lived there a long time. Yeah, well, we never got around to fixing it. It wasn't critical. But then when it's fixed, hey, maybe we should have done that sooner. A small feature on the application. All of these things, they leave a legacy. And if you're there and gone because you were a contractor for a fixed amount of time, or an intern for obviously a fixed amount of time, that in a sense that carries your name with it. Yeah, that's Billy's thing. That's he did that. Sally did that. People will remember you for that, and then when time comes around and maybe you're applying for a job, they will remember you for that thing that they're using now. So it's a good thing. I did want to mention in contracting, if you're a contractor, I think that's sort of the ideal way of the connection between an employee and an employer ought to be established. If you think of like the dating scene, where some contractors are like, look, we just need to get this thing done in 6 months, so we want to bring in a hired gun for the 6 months and knock it out and go goodbye to the hired gun. If we get it done early, he's gone early. So that's okay. That's what you signed up for. But if you're a contract to hire, which is kind of becoming more common, it's a worthwhile thing on both parties, because if you think of dating, you don't go out on 1 or 2 dates and say, let's get married and maybe we'll get divorced in a few years, like me quitting, you firing me. When you're in a contract to hire, now you have a chance to develop the relationship and see over time, now we've been dating now for 6 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever the contract to hire is. And you can see, yeah, this is a place I could enjoy myself, or it isn't, and I've been here my 6 months, so I'm ready to move on and try to find a different relationship. So that to me is the ideal way. But if somebody says I can make you a full-time employee with the benefits and with this and time off and all paid time off and all of that kind of stuff, yeah, that'll turn people's heads and they'll jump on that. But it is a little bit odd to me, uh, or let's say suboptimal. So companies can make the suboptimal more appealing by say, oh, yeah, I'm going to give a full-time position with all these benefits, medical, blah blah blah, and people will jump on it. Uh, but really, think about dating. Say, hey, I just met you, but if you marry me today, you're going to get all of these benefits. That may not be after a short amount of time. You may say, well, you know what, that wasn't worth it. The nature of companies that have IT jobs. Now, broadly speaking, there's two choices one can make. Either the company is in the business of creating or maintaining services and selling IT, like you think of Microsoft or IBM or Intel as monster-sized corporations. That's their business. IT is not only crucial to them, that's what their life is. So quality is crucial for them. Standards, documentation. These are the ones I mentioned were sort of global companies. So national language support plays a role. So they'll do releases and they'll need the backwards compatible. It's not everybody has to get upgraded because it's hard for companies to move. Like you don't jump on the next Microsoft operating system that comes along, or even a service patch, because it's like, hey, I don't trust it yet. I want to see things about it. And it's very disruptive for me if I have to go get a whole bunch of new drivers, or some of the things I have won't run on it. Things I depend on, we won't run on that operating system because not everything's going to be backwards compatible, blah, blah, blah. In the business world, when you're putting out software to or hardware to companies that are depending on your stuff, if it's not backwards compatible, it's not palatable for companies that already have a solution. So you'll see some companies stay on things that support ended on that 10 years ago. Yeah, but we're not moving off of it. So we will pay extra money to get more support for this thing that is too disruptive to move off of. So that's part of that glacial move of companies, businesses, not only the businesses in IT, but like if you've got legacy, like I was talking about hundreds, or maybe a decade of man hours on a piece of software, you don't willingly, easily toss that. If it's still working, if it gets to the point where it's clunky, it no longer runs on anybody's operating system, blah, 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 and you then, okay, now it's time to move on. But hold on as long as you can is sort of the mentality. Now, companies that are selling IT, they want you to move along quicker, but that tends not to be the norm. But those companies, they really have to care a lot about their customers. The other companies that are doing IT are ones where IT is not their business, so IT is a cost center for them. So you think like maybe travel industry, banking, financial institutions. I know AutoZone was one. At one point, I didn't get a job there, but I was looking at working there. Large companies, they have their own IT shops. But those IT shops are not their business. They just facilitate their business. They give us a web presence, that type of thing. So there's a sort of a branch here too. One is let's use AutoZone as an example. They're doing IT that is facing the public. So that's sort of like, well, we're dealing with external customers, but it's our code on our system so we can update it whenever we want. It's not like they sold release 2 and now they put out they're up to release 5. That customer's still on 2. Do we back support it or what? Those are decisions that are made up the chain more when people are looking at who they might lose as a customer and what it's going to cost to support those guys. But if you're working on with a company, say AutoZone's internal processes, like keeping their cash registers working correctly or communicating with the back offices or something, that type of IT, you can get away with a lot less than a company that's going to put stuff out and publicly document things, and they're signing off on things to the world, and if they got it wrong, that's a big deal, and including changing, different language, supporting different languages. Internally, likely not as much, and you can get away with stuff and say, oh yeah, we made a bug there, well, we'll fix it, and it's fixed everywhere when it's fixed. So there's two different mentalities. The plus side for the company that is based in IT is you're integral to what it is that their products and services are. If you're IT to a company as a cost center, then you're not so critical to them, but the bar for the quality and the public and the documentation, et cetera, is not nearly as high as it is to somebody who is doing that as their ultimate product or service. The nature of IT jobs, I mentioned a lot of the software positions just because I've been in a lot of them, but the cycle is the software development life cycle. It really kicks off by either a marketeer, a customer who is like a big enough customer that when that guy talks, you listen, or business exec, a product owner, or the government might make a regulatory change, and that's the biggest of the gorillas. You have to do that because otherwise, you get shut down or something. The roles in IT I talk about is architect, the planner, the designer, the developer, the tester, project managers, product managers, the database administrator, DBA for an acronym, different types of analysts, human factors. Everybody thinks they can do human factors because everybody interfaces with software and stuff. So they say, oh, I know what works well. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work well. I think I'll just do a step aside for a moment and say, we went from like pictures representing words, and it's like that's pretty limiting, hieroglyphics kind of thing, and then sort of like some kind of symbols that represent letters, and we can put letters together and make sounds and make words out of them, and then they have a meaning. But the problem in different places, people would use different alphabets to make different words have maybe the same meaning. But then understanding those across those is different. That's the national language support topic I mentioned earlier. So from a human factors point of view, though, even though the clearest thing is show me things in the language that I know, that adds the expense. Unless you can put like this means save, everybody knows this means save. That's an icon that people can, I recognize that. I don't have to say whatever icon is said in different language, whatever save is said in a different language. I just use that one icon, and I can use it everywhere, and it's worldly known. They go to these iconic instead of word description for tools, but the problem is there are so many types of things. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of things that don't even make sense to put in a picture. And you can't tell what that picture means. I should have showed some examples, but really obscure. You couldn't think of a picture to put something in to represent an action that people might take. So I mean, just off the top of my head, I want to be able to report a problem to IT, report a problem to my servicer, or report a problem someplace else. So I need 3 different icons to say report problem to IT, servicer, and whatever the salesman or something. That's the third category. What am I going to do for those icons? Not easy to come up with something that, oh yeah, everybody knows what that means. Nobody would have known what this was. That didn't grow up learning it, and the people that you learned it from were the people who used these things, so they knew what that meant. But if you just come along now and look at, what is that daggone thing? Yeah, now, they put the papers on them, and really they come like that, and you got to put the paper on yourself, right? Like I showed you the one at IBM when I didn't unpack it. So they don't have that paper on, and the icon, I'm looking at the icon, it shows with the paper on it, like it's got a label on it that you would write on. So anyway, in addition to human factors, which is a skill that I think is people in that role are misusing, that we ought to move away from icons and get back to descriptive things that make more sense and gives you greater flexibility. And yes, there is a cost for the national language support, but guess what? You have to have publications, you have to have descriptions and help menus and things like that, and you got to translate all that stuff anyway. So yes, the words are longer than the symbol can be, but the words have meaning, and people understand those meanings far better than some icon they never saw before. Other areas in IT are information development. You tend to work with those guys a lot. They're members. They tend to be members or quasi-members on development teams. There's infrastructure guys that you depend on, for keeping networks running and things like that, updating software on your system. And there's support guys for what you might be in roles, any of these roles. Support guys for problems that hit the field, whether the field is an internal field, internal to the company, or something external, even someplace on the other side of the world. Because there's a lot of support groups that work historically out of India or Ukraine that are supporting software based from companies that are in the United States, major corporations in the United States. Now, related to hardware industry jobs, I was a project planner on IBM ThinkPads, multiple ThinkPad models, including the top of the line T series. That was their corporate play. That was their premier and their biggest moneymaker play. And what's funny, when you work in hardware as opposed to software, you're working in software, people come up with these ideas and say, oh, look at this, I can add this little widget to this UI and it's pretty cool and they'll let you do this, or add another drop-down choice and have some function behind it. And you have to do some design around it, maybe hit a database and modify a data model and write some code and some documentation that describes this new functionality and test it. And once it rolled all together, you might have to regression test it in the future, but it's largely baked now. You spend something there to put something new out, and then it's out there for however long people think it's useful. When you're working in hardware, so you're always looking to add incremental improvements. When you're working in hardware, the improvements are more for the bottom line for the company. So I was when I was working on a laptop for IBM. If you took, for instance, if it took 8 screws to hold a motherboard to the casing, the shell of a laptop, there'd be people looking for ways. Well, how can we cut the 8 to 6 and not really compromise the integrity of the connection, physical connection between the motherboard and the shell? So you're always looking to chip away something in terms of cost, so you can save some money. Can we make this a little thinner, a little lighter, a little, I'll say, dinkier, to save money, and then maybe make a bigger profit on it, or at least meet a better price point because competitors are doing it. It's really tough. You're really lining up. You break down models from other companies and figure out, well, here's what they paid to put theirs together. Where do we want to have differences from them for value add or for value savings? So like IBM, for instance, had these fabulous keyboards and their ThinkPads. You press a key, just that key moves. A lot of other models, you press a key on this side, you're pressing like the Q, and the whole keyboard sort of is tilting. All of the keys are like they're all connected kind of thing. So it looks dinky, but that don't make the specs nowhere. People are just saying, what's the CPU, how much hard drive space, how much memory, blah, blah, blah. What's the resolution on a display on a laptop? And they're not looking at how well this thing disperses heat, so it doesn't get so hot when it's sitting on your lap, not burning your legs. So working on hardware is different in a lot of ways. And when you take away 2 screws and it saves money, that's saving money on every unit that you sell going out into the future. But if those screws are in there, they're costing you money for every unit that you sell. As opposed to the software, you have some upfront cost to put this extra widget into your software that makes it look neat, or functionality. That's going to be there once you pay that upfront cost. You really don't have to pay much more after that. But in hardware, you're always paying for those 8 screws. So if you can take 2 out, you're saving money for every unit that you sell. And IBM would sell, I think, well, now it's Lenovo's ThinkPads. They sold 80 million units in 2021 of their laptops. So if you're saving a few pennies on each one, that's a lot of money in the end. Now, I remember this one thing that IBM had, and this one torqued me because I thought it was so cool. They had this Think light that they had in the lid of a laptop that would throw light down on the keyboard. So in low light conditions, you don't have to turn up the lights in a room or something like that so you can see the keyboard. This little light, little tiny bulb inside there, costs think about 15-ish cents, 10, 15 cents. Can show you the keyboard sufficiently well so you can work at night in bed when you're sleeping next to your spouse or something. Now, somebody come up with this idea, and I thought it was a fabulous idea. They put a black light in the key and as the think light was a black light, and they colored all the characters on the keyboard with like a phosphorescent paint. So if you ever go to these places where they have the black light and your white shirt like glowing and all of this kind of stuff, this had that effect on his key, and it was like each key had like a light underneath, and it was bright. It was really cool looking, and it wasn't like you're squinting with the think light. You still had to squint a little bit to see these things. This here and all, they were popping, and it was really really cool. But to do that, the paint and the bulb was like 70 cents compared to 10ish 15 cents, and that squashed it. They did a big marketing campaign for the think light, which wasn't near the functionality of the black light, but it also wasn't near the cost. So they killed that, and I thought that was going to be like one of the biggest things they could do in terms of usability and attractiveness, and something you could really plug. But I guess I don't think enough like the hardware guys think. So, at any rate, it's a bit of a different paradigm in hardware as in software. Hardware, you're always looking where can we take cost out. We do want to add function. There are some things that IBM would add, but they're more often looking at how do we keep price down, the cost down. Whereas software, they're always looking to add this and add that, because in the end, the cost of the software is not going to be affected. They got the developers working on whatever else they're working on anyway. They're just finding some new things. Now, the development programs you will live in or with. I mentioned the waterfall one before. It's considered old school. It's heavily serialized, and it tends to be developed with towers. Like there's the developers over there, and there's the testers there, and there's the planners there, and the information development, the ID guys there, acronym. But the reality is, it developed that way because that's the way the real world works. You can't build a house and say, we've got guys that can put in roofs, guys that can put in plumbing, guys that can lay foundations, guys that can put up wall. Okay, let's everybody work together. You can't until the foundation's laid, right? You can't do plumbing and stuff till walls are put on. You can't put a roof on until the walls are put on. So there is a serialization innate to development, basically of anything, certainly the software, as there is the building a house. So even though we sort of mock or look down our nose at that old school, there's problems with waterfall, no question. But the Agile is just baby waterfalls all along, because you have to identify requirements before you can do design, before you can do development, before you can do tests, before you can maybe not necessarily fully public document it, but you can start that a little bit earlier. But you can't get it done until you see that the testing is not going to change what was done in the development, because that can happen too. So Agile is just reduced waterfalls, smaller in size, which is useful because when I was at IBM, when we used classic old school waterfall, we'd be on, could be a 2-year development program for a new release of a product. 2 years. Well, since customers weren't in rushes to change, if they had a function they really needed that they wanted in, if we couldn't patch it in with some dot release, okay, then yeah, we're under some pressure to get that next release out, because it is a more significant thing that they want, and they're willing to move to that. So Agile gives you nimbler and more parallelism and immediate feedback, because you're showing what you're doing, and stakeholders can be interacting and say, no, that's not what I was asking for, or yeah, that's spot on, and I like what you did there. You even went on it further. Agile is light on process and documentation. That runs counter to what typically management, which tends to be conservatives, like we don't want bad things to happen. We don't lose our information that we have. So document. And Agile says, no. There's self-documentation in the software and minimal documentation elsewhere, which is maybe a little bit extreme, but that's sort of how it grew up. So there's a little bit of butt heads that go there. Whereas I'll say classic waterfall, they had a whole group devoted to that, so they spent a lot of time doing those. The two most common forms of Agile are Scrum, with their 2 to 3 week sprints and stuff, which I'm understanding that schools are instructing in that, and Kanban, which is more suited for firefighting. So when something is done in manufacturing, so when something pops up, right now we take it. If something pops up in the beginning of a sprint, a 2-week sprint cycle, well, we'll put it in our next sprint. So wait 2 weeks before we do anything with it. That often is not a good way to handle something, but that's the way of the world, right? So a lot of times the people working on Scrum teams, development teams, are also going to be responsible for fixing bugs that are found in the field because they're the SMEs, the subject matter expert, another acronym. Well, if I committed to doing something in a 2 week period and I'm going to get hit with this outside problem that I have to give the highest priority to, then my 2 week commitment is not a good one. I can't hold to that. I made that commitment in good faith that I didn't have anything else coming along. And then there's these tricks we try to buffer. So, well, we'll give you some spare. Well, it wasn't enough of buffering. So don't hold me to what I committed to doing because you gave me something that was unexpected and you said is higher priority. So that's one of the things that can happen in the Agile world, Agile Scrum world. If you're doing Kanban, that's expected. I was working on this. Whoop, something higher. I just put that thing I was working on out and do this thing because priorities can shift on a dime in the Kanban world, which makes it less predictable in terms of when you get something done because things keep coming in ahead of that one thing I was working on. And it's that one thing I was working on, you thought I was going to get it done in like 2 days, is sliding out because higher priorities keep coming in. While talking about Agile, I'm gonna one of my soapboxes is it's Agile. It's not Agile. We don't say mobile, we say mobile. So in U.S. English at least, that may be UK English will say agile and mobile or something like that. But U.S. English is not that way. It sounds like an I, not a. It sounds like a not a I, long I. Mobile and agile. That shows that you're a patriot, right? The nature and motivations of managers and executives. Now, generally, this is my impression. Generally, the higher level of manager, the more upward focused they are. I mean, they're looking to climb the ladder, and the ladder gets narrower and narrower. The opportunities get narrower and narrower the higher up you go. There's a lot more first line managers than there are second line, than there are third line, and so on. And one guy at the top, the pyramid. So they become more protective of how they look to those above them, because those are the ones they're going to get the jobs from if there are opportunities to move. And you'll see this. This is a common error that first line managers will make, that they'll tell people, and I haven't heard this that much lately, but I heard it a lot when I first was started in the industry, that they'll say, your job is to make me look good. And that's never your job. Really, from the company's perspective, they care about making the customers happy, delighting the customers, not making your immediate manager, who may have a lot of influence over what you're going to end up doing or becoming, or if you're even staying with the company. You have a personal vested interest in that, but really that's not what the company wants you to be. It may be what your first line manager wants you to be or do. I've had second line managers tell me that. Your job's to make me look good. No, it's not. It's to delight the customer. Oh, yeah, right, okay. I know where your thoughts are, but that's not a helpful thing. So they tend to be, often management up the chain, they tend to be risk averse. That's why I say they tend to be more conservative about things, because if you do something that's out of the norm and it doesn't work, that's a huge ding, right? And you can see this in the sports world. Oh, you're going to go for it on fourth down. If you make it, you're a hero kind of guy. Oh, what a great call. And if you don't, what an idiot. Why wasn't he punting that ball? So the safer play is always to be more risk adverse, but it's not always the best play. For sure, it's not. Life's about taking risk. So what you depend on is people having enough experience to take risks wisely. And the higher up you go in the organization, well, then the bigger the risks become, and that's why they tend to be, like I say, more conservative in terms of what decisions they're making. This is not a universal statement. This is a generalization, and it's not always the case. And I've been worked for very dynamic, higher level executives and very, I say, risk adverse. Another word, crappy, high level executives. So you don't know until you're in there and you see what they're doing and scratching your head about it. The nature and motivation of peer workers. Now, People have different motivations for what. I mean, the first one I always talk about is what my salary is. Blah blah blah. I don't want to work there. I can get more money working here. Blah blah blah. And the reality is that's an initial thing that comes. This industry pays really well. I say pretty much my whole career I was overpaid. Uh, I'm not complaining, but I look at people building houses and stuff, and I say, man, I couldn't do that, and I'm probably making more than the whole team over there is making. So uh, it's not about the pay, and when you're getting paid comfortably enough, yeah, you can always be greedy and want more and more and more. Okay, this guy's getting more than me, whatever. That's that's not the end all be all. I mean, if you got unlimited money, what are you going to do with it? That's what's more important to you. Not making the money, how are you going to live when you have the money? And you can live to the level that you have the money because this is comfortable salaries that people get in the IT business. So people look for, they may want to be able to expand themselves and learn new things. They want a variety of stuff to do. They want to have fun when they're working. They don't want to work. They want to have fun. Put in energy that's fun and is producing what the company wants them to produce. That's ideal. You never go to work, you go to fun. You go to play. And your play is delighting your employer, and delighting your peers, and delighting the customers, your customers, the company's customers. So that's the ideal. That is not a grudge to go in there and, well, I got to do it, and I got to shovel a crap or something. Right? You want to have friendships that you develop. You want challenging work, not something that's monkey work. Although monkey work's always a necessary part because you've got to cross T's and dot I's. Those are monkey work things, but they have to be done. You want some level of sense of stability. Some people want more stress, some people want less stress. Some people like the hyperactive things. Oh, I'm ready to fight fires all over the place. Or like, whoa, I like something a little bit more planned out. Opportunities people like, whether it's an upward growth or a sideways growth, because then you can learn from either one. If the company just sees money as a supreme motivator, and that tends to be what they do, what they see, and that's a finite pie that, oh, we can dole out this much money in bonuses or raises or whatever that are tied them to promotions. So it's always limited with what we can do because the money is limited. So without looking beyond that and seeing these other things that people prize, and they actually prize more than money. When there was a survey done, this goes back a few years, I haven't looked to see if there's another one, like salary was like fifth on a list of things that people want in work. These other things mattered more. Opportunity to, going upward or presenting, and that upward not for raises, but just to show, I want to be able to show myself, my capabilities. That's rewarding to me because I think I have more than what I'm asked to do. So having an opportunity to show those things is a pretty cool thing for me. And whether or not I get a raise or promotion or a bonus, that's not what I'm talking about it for. I want to just show me. So because, and I'm going to point at HR a little bit for this, that because they tie that to the money, then HR has to come up, tie or assume that people are tied to the money as their major motivator. HR comes up with these ways to how are we going to divvy up this fixed pie amongst all these people? And then they come up with things and how they decide to do that, as opposed to allowing these other things to filter in, like time off or being able to work from home, which didn't used to be the case in the old days. Without having all those things, you couldn't work from home without lands, without internet, blah, blah, blah. You could work from home like hey, review this document. We used to have documents that were several hundred pages that we would write. Formats and architectures formats, architecture protocols at FAPS. And they were hundreds of pages long for SNA, System Network Architecture. Those are a couple of acronyms I showed early on. I said I wasn't going to talk about, but there they are. So if you're going to review that, I'm going to go off to a library somewhere and take a look at this, mark it up, and give my comments back to whoever the authors are. But if your desire is something other than just the money, like I want more flexible hours, more of this, more of that, and some of those things are coming naturally because of the flexibility that working in IT inherently gives people. People can be rewarded with that, and just, if I have more of that, then I'm happy. You don't need to give me a raise. I'm making enough money. Just give me this other stuff. which in a sense translates to money, but it's not money out of the company's pocket directly. So I think HR is a place, I think it's my next slide, but I'm going to talk about them more. But in terms, let me hold it for that. Next item we'll talk about is managing your career versus doing what others want. And I tended to focus on doing what others want. And I don't know if it probably limited me in my career, I'm guessing overall. If a manager had something that they wanted done and they couldn't find somebody to do it because whatever, it wasn't in their interest, or they didn't think it was going to be fun, or whatever the heck it was, I would always just sign up. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll do this, I'll do that. Whatever it was, you want that done, I'll get it done. So what happened then, I didn't focus on becoming better as a developer and saying, I only want to do things that involve development, for example. So then I was limited in how good a developer I was. Even though I would later lead team with developers that were far better than I am, it didn't matter. I wasn't doing that grunt work. I was overseeing what the team was doing as a team lead, as a facilitator, as an enabler, as a roadblock remover. So if you manage your career and say, no, I have clearer in my mind what kinds of steps I want to take in my career, then you're often going, or at least sometimes going to blunt what a request comes from a manager, yours or another parallel manager that might ask for a favor and say, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time to do that because it's a choice you can make. And I think from a career perspective, I might have been better off more managing my career. But in terms of enjoying the path I was on, I did enjoy doing the, what do you need? Okay, that's what I'll do. Path. So let them, in a sense, manage what I'm doing, which is not really necessarily my best interest. It's more in their best interest, but I'm okay with that. That was all right. So that's a decision you'll have to make, and you'll see that decision when you are in the field, in IT. Now, here's another place I want to talk about HR, is performance appraisals. Now, when they have this limited pie of money or promotions or bonuses, which is part of the money, how do you put yourself in a position there and say, well, I got this fixed pie, how do I share it out? Like, do the hungriest people get the biggest slice of the pie? Or do the people who need food the most get the biggest pie? Or the ones who I like the most because they did the most get the biggest piece of the pie? It's a hard thing to call because think of your family. Let's say, I don't know, one you grew up in, or one you have, if you've got multiple siblings, let's do it that way. If you have multiple siblings, and would you want your parents saying this sibling was more important than you, or was more valued than you, and they're going to get a bigger chunk of my attention, my love, because they earned it over you? That's effectively what these guys have to. Now, they may say, I'll take them on vacation because they like traveling. You don't. But what I'll do for you is, because you like whatever that fill in the blank is, I'll make sure that you get that while I'm taking them to Europe or something, because that's what they want. People want different things and look to satisfy them. If they're worthwhile having them as an employee, then look to satisfy them as an employee, which doesn't necessarily mean money. But at any rate, with all of the changes that we've seen technologically, HR is doing business like this is centuries old stuff. IBM used to rank at a certain level that you were across the whole big area. It could be 100 or more people at your level, your grade level, and they would rank those 100 people. Other managers didn't know who, like 98% of the people were in this group that they were ranking. They know their guy. So everybody has to fight for their guy, and there's these trade-offs. Well, look, you had a number one guy in that thing. I'm going to get a number one guy in this group. And it was just like a bunch of BS, which they didn't need to be doing that. And if you think about it, and they tried to hide that from employees, but people did find out. And then they said, we're not doing it anymore. And then they snuck it back in, and we're doing it again, because that's all they knew. But that's not the way you have to do it. Anytime you're keeping secrets, unless it's for the business reason, not for internal reasons, there's something not so good about that you have to keep secrets about the way you operate. You don't have to necessarily tell people what salaries are, because that's personal information. But if you don't even say what the process is, in my opinion, that's a problem, because you're sort of embarrassed about it, ashamed about it, and you're festering. I get a better appraisal when you get a worse one, or vice versa. So we're building up in this team that we're supposed to be working together and helping each other perform. We're being divisive about that. If I make you look bad, I'm better off in terms of being able to get graded above you. That's BS. But that's what I've seen, and I'm not in management, so I don't know in every company I've been in how they work it. But I know IBM did it that way. It's bad. It's a bad plan to do it that way. So one of the things that would be nice to see changed, and it's not only IT industry, but across industries, is the way they handle appraisals. But I don't hold out a lot of breath waiting for that. Now, the next category I want to talk about is the concept of workplace families. And we refer to that a lot because you work with these people that you're working with, and you spend time with them, especially if you're on site, but even remotely, more time with them than you do with your immediate family and friends. If you're spending 8 hours a day, and maybe more than that sometimes, when you were if you're in an office, you see them more than you see your own spouse or kids or best friends. So you can develop really good bonds with these people that you're working with, and as part of your goal is to have fun and enjoy and be enjoyable to be with, and they have the same goal, then you enjoy each other's company. So that's a really nice thing. But don't fool yourself to thinking you really are family. You're not family. It's like family. You're friends. You're good friends, because people will get up and leave the department, or it might be fired, and that doesn't happen in families. You might say that's the troublemaking guy in the family. He's the black sheep in the family, and he's been arrested, blah blah blah. But he's still my brother. And there's always that kind of link there. Even if I don't like my brother, he's still my brother. This here he's not your coworker anymore. He's not your employee anymore. He's gone. And I've had a lot of really good friends in my career, my 40 years in IT. And I don't know if I don't even need one hand to count on how many I still have relationships with. And at the time, we were tight, very tight. And it's like, okay, they moved on to something else. There's some other people filling those spots. You only can have so many people that you're really close with. And those people, once they leave, they tend to fall out of that spot. Even though if they were one of those close people when you were there working with them, then they're gone. Or if you're gone, that whole nest of people you were with, you fall out with. You'll contact them again if you're looking for a job or something. Hey, something else, I can get it. But the relationships, they're not familial. You're not family, even though we'll say that a lot, because there's close bonds, and it's just, teams will say that in sports. Yeah, we're like a big family. Yeah, and then you get traded, or you become a free agent and you purposely leave on your own design. That don't happen in real families. So it's the use of family. You can use that word, but it's not like blood family. Just keeping that in mind. Now, here was my looping back to the HR. There's two organizations in a corporation that really don't get much questioned. Even the executives can get pressed back on by the board, for instance, or higher level executives. And those fights or skirmishes or whatever they happen at levels that you don't normally see. But you do interact with HR. You might interact with legal. And those are outfits that even the executives don't press too much on, at least not that I've ever seen or known. And they are organizations, you can recognize the legal one. Hey, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what's going on. They have to do things from a legal perspective. Okay, whatever they're saying, we go by that. That's why the executives sort of hands off, because we get legal trouble if we go against what the lawyer said. So in a way, they're above anybody in a company, the legal department. They can call shots that override what the CEO wants to do, what the president wants to do. Doesn't happen often, but in the end, they have that stick. They have that much power. They say, you do this, you're at risk of that. Oh, okay, I can see that. I won't do that. Okay, that's what the lawyer was suggesting you don't do. Uh, HR, which you do interact with a lot. I mean, because they're the ones that talk with you about your benefits, and you got to apply for benefits and what time off. If you have issues, I need some extended time off or whatever. Got a medical situation or something, or family situation. So you do interact with them, and they tend to seem to be like your best buddies when these kind of situations arise. But they really are for the company, and they're working to protect the company. So if you're going to get fired or something, that they're the ones that end up getting involved for that too, and they're not going to go to bat for it. It's not like if you think of a union that your union head, they try to stand in the way and keep you from being suspended or fired or anything like that. You look at all these sports things, and people, they'll fight against the league office who wants to punish a player, and the union will step in. This is not like that. This is like, we do a lot of good stuff for you, but in the end, they're serving and they're covering the butts of management. If you're going to get fired, they're going to make sure that it's in a way that you can't cause grief for them. Like suing if you're not an at-will state or something. So they have because, and I say both of these organizations don't really get much pushback. But because of that, there's not much motivation for them to grow or change. And that's what leads to this crappy way we do appraisals, in my opinion, crappy way of doing appraisals or viewing that whole process. So there is room for growth in there. You have to recognize, there's a point of this I'm going to make with the HR, is recognize that they are there for protecting the company. They will dole out the goodies and stuff like that too, which is always nice to see and get. And they are, generally tend to be nice people and stuff, but they are not your allies as much as they are the company's allies. So if there's a battle between you and the company for whatever reason, the side they'll be on is going to be against you. So that's just the way that part is. But if you get in a battle with the company, you may be in trouble anyway for other reasons, and nobody, not even HR, is not going to be one that'll help you out of that. Maybe the legal, but probably not, because legal company's going to go by what legal says. Next topic, having a tester mentality in job and life is necessary for improvement in both. So it's easier to see in IT because we have this nice development life cycle where it starts with requirements and it works its way through, that you start, begin with the end in mind kind of thing. The requirements are coming in, you want to understand what the requirements are, and then you want to be able to deliver something that solves the requirements. Now, a tester mentality is, in a sense, challenging anything. They challenge the requirements. Look at them, try to understand what the requirement, understand whether whatever this proposed solution or design is going to be, is going to satisfy the requirements, meet the goal. And you test, ideally you test from the very beginning, from the requirements all the way through. You don't wait until everything gets done. This was more the waterfall method. And then something shows up on my doorstep, test that thing. What against what? Oh, these requirements over here. Hey, these requirements are a bunch of crap. You want us to have a bunch of crap that we're going to deliver? What is this about? The testing should have been going all along. And the earlier you catch something that's not right, that doesn't seem right, you might be wrong in thinking it's not right, but then you understand more like, oh, okay, now I get it. The earlier you catch any problem, the less cost it is to fix that problem. If you wait till it's out in the field and say, oh, man, how'd we miss that? Well, we did. Now we got to fix it. Now there may be a whole bunch of things that change the data model, this, and we got to put all this code in. We got to test the patch we want to put out there, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot costlier to do that rather than early on say, wait a minute. What's this? And seeing it then when it's just in somebody's mind or on a piece of paper written down, catch that. So that tester mentality in the IT job that you can see huge benefit for. It's not only a tester's job, it's everybody. They call us quality assurance, which to me is a poor name because tell us what we do. Like developer, you call a developer, he's doing development, or designer is doing design. A QA guy is doing test. And test in all its form, it's all its glory. So tester is the grandest way to think of it, and it's a way that everybody could be seeing themselves. And now it applies in life as well, because you want quality in life, and a way to get towards quality to make sure that you are living the life you want to live, your requirements, your goals, kind of thing, is to test, am I on that path? So testing is fundamental to living a desired life, producing a desired product. So what I'm sort of urging, whether or not you're in IT, to have that tester's mentality, not only in your job, but also outside your job, in your life. With the mentality of a tester, there's a complementary side to that, and that is to have the recognition that other people are going to have the mentality of a tester on you and your work. That's important stuff. I mean, what testing is doing is a form of exercise. It's an exercising of your skills and your quality of your output to improve it. That's a good thing. That's what people ought to want. That a lot of people get a little bit embarrassed because if I get tested, I might be short in some ways, and then they take that as a personal affront or something. Whereas it's the exact opposite of what's happening. Is people are trying to validate. You wouldn't buy something that wasn't tested, right? I won't buy a car unless it was run through the ringer, or software. Hey, I'm not going to put on that software patch until other people are saying, yeah, it seems to be pretty good. I mean, so that's sort of a mass testing going on. You'll read reviews before you buy something, because other people are going to give basically their experience, their testing of, not official testing, but that's what they're doing when they're using something and they're giving feedback on it. That's a form of testing. So you depend on everybody else to test everything else. You damn well better be willing to be tested yourself and to have your work tested, because that's in your best interest. Just like it's in your best interest to see the testing and done on other things, it's in your best interest to have the testing done on you, on your output. So, like, for instance, if you're writing in software in an IT shop, where do you want your problems to be found? Internally by your testing guys, or when it hits the field by the customers? And then it blows up because it comes in and some big customer complains about some quality issues. Well, who was responsible for this? What team? What person? That blows back on you. So and it blows back on the tester for not having done good enough job to have caught it before it got shipped. So that's why it's important to have that quality, the tester mentality. And I want to go back to something else. When I said the ISO 9000 was largely a scam, in my opinion, it's not that audits for sure, that's a form of testing. Those are good things. It's important to be audited. That's outside people looking at work that's being done, and maybe we're all inbred and we don't see things that other people with fresh eyes might could see. The problem with the ISO audits is, and they're going after certification, and you just do things to get the certification. You minimize what you want to say. You don't really see them as a partner in helping you be better. You're just trying to get through that test to get the stamp, seal of approval, ISO 9000 certified. So you cross. That's the part of I'm calling a scam. So audits in general, testing in general, are not scams. Those are necessary, critically important. And there needs to be more of them, not fewer of them. The ISO, basically every certification program, in my opinion, has a bit of a scamness to it. But that one in particular, I've been through many of those, and I don't see them as helping improve quality of anything. You're just going after a stamp. But it's, if your company is demanding we get ISO certified, you have to treat it as something serious, even if you have to play the game. That this is a serious, important matter to do. The reality is it's not going to help your product. It's not really going to be a good measuring stick of the quality of your product. That's on you and a tester mentality that you and those you work with have. Now I have one more slide that is not specific to IT, and that is understandings that will help in career and life. First one I have here is, you have the who, what, where, when, how, why kinds of questions that a proper journalist would ask, or anybody doing investigation, anybody doing testing. The most important of those questions is the why. A lot of the other ones you can answer with like one word. Well, what happened? That guy got shot. Well, who was the guy? Give a guy's name. Who did the shooting? Give a guy's name. Where did it happen? Here. When did it happen? I'll give you a time. Oh, quick answers. Why did it happen? That's the one that's involved. That's the one that leads to the greatest understanding. So I think of the example of Isaac Newton and an apocryphal story of the apple falling on his head, and he thinks about gravity. Well, he's seen a lot of things fall in his life. A lot of people did. But when he stopped to think, well, wait, why? Why did the apple fall out of the tree or whatever, fell off or whatever? And that question that he asked and then the work that he did to understand the answer changed the world, changed our understanding of the world by asking why. That's pretty cool. You can do that in your own life, and you can change significant aspects of your own life by asking the why questions. Why do I have these as my priorities? Why is this my motivation? Why did I want to do that? Why did I do it? Those are the hard questions. I felt like it, and it seemed like the right thing at the time. No, peel it back to understand what your goals are. They may not be conscious goals, but you won't know that unless you peel back that onion and understand the why. And once you get there, worlds open up. I'm going to close with this other work that I've been doing besides IT work. It's sort of a life mission of mine. And it revolves around the sense of self. And that is how we think about ourselves, our self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves, our self-love. And the strength of the sense of self determines our holistic health, our physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. They're all tied up in our sense of self. People know the phrase, our perceptions determine our reality, and which is true. I mean, if I don't perceive of something, it's not, never heard of it, smelled it, touched it, read about it, saw it, it's not in my world. It's not in my reality. But it's the sense of self that directs our perceptions. So it's our sense of self that determines what our reality is. Yes, we get our perceptions that give us the data that lets us form a reality, but what perceptions we're getting, it's the sense of self that directs that. What we choose to focus on and not focus on. So this last item is I'm going to include some links below to information that talks about what the sense of self is, its importance in life, and ways and how you can strengthen the sense of self, which is monumental. A little improvement in that throughout your life is every waking moment, every sleeping moment, the rest of your life. If you bump your sense of self up, there's benefits accruing to that all through your life, which is super cool, right? So that's what you want. So a nice thing to look for in a job is ways to grow my sense of self. And with that, I will leave you, and good luck in your chosen profession. Toodles.